Who want one last trip to the long trail?
Almost 2 years later, and there's still no announcement for Tekken Bloodline Season 2. When that series released on Netflix and you looked at the Tekken subreddit, all you would see is people talking about one, the shadows. The triangle shadows was something that players could not get past, and once you seen it, you could not unsee it. Two, the second thing that a lot of players took issue with was the inclusion of characters like Leroy and Fang, who were not actually playable in Tekken 3. Now, in my opinion, I don't think that was a bad idea, because think about it like this, right? Especially for Fang Wei. Fang Wei is a character who travels around looking for the toughest of the toughest opponents. And yes, his story starts in Tekken 4 when he kills Asuka's master, but you would have to imagine before then, he is still going around being Feng Wei. So him showing up in the tournament or being in other places is not too far off. And the same thing for Leroy Smith. For Leroy Smith specifically, he was such a cool character in Tekken Bloodline. The role he played being this counter to the Mishimas hating Jin, and then also you had Jin Kazama breaking his leg. That whole narrative was so cool. And in my opinion, that was the whole purpose of doing a show, doing a series. It's not to just retell Tekken 3, but to give us a deeper insight into the game. Although I enjoyed it as like a Tekken diehard fan, I did breakdowns of each episode and talked about the true meaning within it. I still believe that it, just as a show on its own, wasn't the best. This show suffered from bad writing, rushed plot. A lot of the visual effects was kind of mediocre. Like we said before, the shadows was kind of an eyesore. Season 1 was a very, very rough season, and when I look at the review score and I see a 40% from the critics and I see a 76% from the audience, it kind of makes sense. One thing that was very obvious about this show as well is that the budget was very, very low. They did this thing periodically throughout the show where they showed flashback after flashback after flashback, and when we got to the final 2 episodes, that's when it really became a problem and you could not look past it. This show definitely did some good, but it fell short in a lot of ways, and it makes sense why a lot of people quickly forgot about this. It came and went. Now on Twitter, Michael Murray was also talking a little bit about Tekken Bloodline and sharing some crucial information that I think points to a season 2 not happening. Reading the news about Street Fighter live action film losing its director does make me wish that we could have got another season of Tekken Bloodline and get some sort of update from Harada and Michael Murray on it. Both Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, they are making like movies and TV shows, and they're trying to like branch out. And even though this one for Tekken didn't work out, I think they should continue to do so because there's just so much potential there. You really just have to go all in. Like if you look at a X-Men 97 or if you look at Invincible, like there's many examples of like an anime or like a show where the studio and the directors go all in and they pour a enormous amount of budget into it and they make it something incredible. I really look at Tekken Bloodline and I just think like they didn't give it their all. Bandai Namco is a massive company. This was something they did with the bare minimum to test the water, and it really didn't work out. And I hope they don't give up. I hope they continue to try and also pump more resources into it. But Michael Murray says, I'm glad to see this. This project was one of my favorites. Honestly, the script was pretty bad when it first came to us, so I rewrote as much of it as I could with the limits imposed. I thought it turned out relatively okay. I wish there was a new season, but it's not up to us. Now, this tweet here from Michael Murray does not sound good at all. First off, when you talk about him getting the script from Netflix, if you guys are like deep into movie shows and you understand how a lot of things are currently going left in a lot of franchises, Star Wars, Marvel, really Disney as a whole, you could talk about Game of Thrones, there's many disasters all over the place. And it would make sense that a Netflix studio would not properly understand Tekken and would just try to like do this with that character, this character here, and just get crazy with it. And Michael Murray and the developers would have to step in and say, hey, hold on a second. That's not how these characters would act. That's not how this would be, and start rewriting stuff. But then when you focus on the part where he says that it turned out relatively okay, that to me is where the real bombshell is. Usually when someone talks about their show or their product or whatever, they say it was awesome, it was great, it was successful, it was phenomenal. They use these big words, magnificent, marvelous, to describe the impact. So the fact that Michael Murray is really using a word like relatively okay, that's kind of a negative word. It just speaks to how unimpactful this series was. Like, even when you look at the Tekken subreddit, the most diehard of Tekken fans, it was nothing but criticism. And here's the thing that I was asking when it first released. If the average Tekken fan can't get behind it and be excited for this, how do you expect the average Netflix viewer, right? Someone who watches animes all the time, when they get to Tekken Bloodline, will it meet their expectation in terms of quality, in terms of story, in terms of animation? And in my opinion, I feel like Tekken Bloodline fell short in so many of those areas, and I seen it from a mile away that a season 2 probably would not happen. If you think about The Boys is currently going on, season 4 is happening. And as season 4 is happening, they already said they're working on the season 5, and season 5 will be the final season. The fact that we didn't hear anything like that for Tekken Bloodline season 2, like they're not making it, they're not thinking about it, they're not this, I think that was a clear sign that they weren't going to do it. And last thing that I'll say is, I hope they can try something else again.